A good Erev Yom Tif, Chag Sameach. In our Tuesday morning Talmud class, we recently began learning tractate Sukkah, which is very nogeya, very pertinent, as you might expect by the title, to this time of year. The first chapter is titled appropriately Sukkah, as the Mishnah begins, Sukkah shehi gavoa lemala mesrim ama psula. If the roof of your sukkah is more than 20 arm lengths off the ground, then your sukkah does not accomplish the mitzvah of sukkah when you sit in it. There are a couple of possibilities why this is so, a couple of reasons. One reason might be is that when you sit in a sukkah, you have to have in mind that we're doing it because God took us out of Egypt and caused us to dwell in booths for the duration of our sojourn in the desert to protect us from the blistering sunlight. If the roof of your sukkah now is so high when you're sitting in it that let's say in the shul parking lot or wherever it is, then you quite likely won't notice the schach, the temporary makeshift covering of the roof, and you will not be reminded of the mitzvah, and therefore, if you're not thinking of it, the mitzvah, the sukkah, becomes invalid. Or perhaps the rule has something to do with shade. If you want to join the class and get into this conversation, we can bring you up to speed. So if sukkah has a maximum height, you would suspect it has a minimum height also, right? You probably won't be shocked to learn that there's a dispute about this, as there are about so many points in halacha. Rav Huna maintains that a sukkah's floor plan should be a minimum of dalid al dalid, 4 amot by 4 amot, 4 arm lengths by 4 arm lengths. Let's call it 6 feet square. Why is this so? Because the mitzvah of sukkah says, Teishvu ke'ein taduru, we should dwell in the sukkah as we dwell in our home. Make it our main residence for the 7 days of Yom Tif. Eat in it, sleep in it, study in it, for 8 days if you live outside of Israel. 6 feet by 6 feet, not quite 2 meters square. That's as small as a sukkah can be. And we can reasonably expect a person to live in it for the duration of the holiday. Any smaller than that, it's not a dwelling, it's a punishment cell. And if you lived in such a place, you'd go outside and sit out in the open air rather than be confined to such a tiny space, at least in Rav Huna's view, in any case. However, he's challenged by his colleague, Rav Hanan bar Rabba, who says, no, such a luxurious sukkah is lovely, but what we're trying to determine is the absolute minimum sukkah size that's required to fulfill the mitzvah. Rav Hanan bar Rabba says any sukkah that you can squeeze into, not only squeeze into, but squeeze part way into. Not only squeeze part way, all you have to do is get into the sukkah, your head, the majority of your body, not even all of it, but most of it, more than half, plus your table. You have to be able to rest your food on something so you don't spill your soup all over your nice Yom Tif suit. So while Rav's minimum for a sukkah seems quite menschlich, 2 meters square, Rav Hanan bar Rabba sounds more like a squeeze. But once again, we're talking about the bare minimum that works for the mitzvah of sukkah. Maybe you're traveling. Maybe you're in the gulag in Siberia and you only have enough wood to build the minimum of what a sukkah should be to allow you to fulfill the mitzvah somehow. Who knows what the situation might be? Maybe it's just a stance for arguing the legality of a sukkah that's that size and the invalidity of a sukkah that's any smaller. For whatever reason, Rav Hanan bar Abba maintains in his words, Rosho verubo v'shulchano, the person's head, most of his body, and his table. Rosho, rubo v'shulchano. Right? Body, head, most of the body, and the table. Again, it doesn't sound very comfortable, but in a pinch, quite literally, he argues that that is the minimum. Look, our sukkahs in our times are comfortable, they're decorated, they're luxurious, sometimes windows, air conditioning, heating, electric lighting. We really have come a long way. And our Sukkot are in some ways like our homes, so we actually do fulfill the instruction of Teishvu ke'ein taduru, dwell in the sukkah like you dwell in your house. Okay, maybe not quite the same roof made of bamboo poles and tree clippings, but you get the point. So let's take Rav Hanan's argument and look at it through the lens of Teishvu ke'ein taduru, but in the spiritual sense, not just the physical, practical sense, because it's always tempting to get caught up in the practical details, the measurements, the centimeters and inches, and pay less attention to the meaning, the deeper message, the lesson of the mitzvah. And it's a shame if we miss out on that. The mitzvah of sukkah is telling us to make your sukkah your main home, just as your house is your home the rest of the year. Of course, That's talking about a chair, a table, a place to stand, and all that. But it's more. Rosho, your head, has to be at home. We're often thinking of places we'd rather be. Business deals we'd rather be doing. Friends we'd rather be hanging out with. When we are actually physically home, how much of the time are we mentally or emotionally someplace else, thanks to the miracle of internet and virtual reality? The most important thing this mitzvah is suggesting is for your head to be at home, in the sukkah or the house, whichever one you're dwelling in at the time. Let your head be there rather than be someplace else. Rubo is most of you, the majority of you. People eat out. People go to the cottage. They go to events, gatherings, dinners, social occasions, all kinds of places. They don't need a home. They need a garage, a place to park the car while they sleep. Rubo means most of you at home, the center of your family life. It's true, some are studying and some are working, some might be in Florida for the winter. Nevertheless, the idea is that most of you should be where you are. And shulchano, your table. The table is compared in many places in the rabbinic literature to the mizbeach, the altar in the middle of the temple. It's the place where we serve God through what we do in our daily lives. Of course, kosher, of course, brachas, blessings before and after we eat. Even more the idea of l'shem shamayim, that it's not only about us, it's about God, it's about something more than just us, it's about the source of life. The Rif, Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi from Fez, Morocco, holds like Beis Shammai, that a sukkah that doesn't have a table in it is not really a sukkah, it's not really a home. You have to have the table there because so much important stuff takes place around the table. Rosho, Rubo, V'Shulchano. Your head, most of you, and your table, all in the sukkah. Then it can truly be called Sukkat Shalom, a sukkah of peace, as we say in Ma'ariv, every evening of the year when we daven Ma'ariv. Ufrois aleinu Sukkas Shalomecha. Spread over us your shelter of peace, God. All the month of Tishrei is asking us to devote extra focus to what we do. It's always striking how on the 10 days of tshuva, we have to slow down our davening, slow down our prayer to make sure we get all the changes for the 10 days. The rest of the year, we could speed right through the Amidah. It's a good thing the police can't ticket you for reckless davening or davening over the speed limit. Zoom, we're done. For 10 days, you have to look in the words of the Siddur, follow every change, and say it with precision, deliberation, focus, intention, kavanah. The rest of the year, we're davening, and part of us is thinking about kiddush or breakfast or whatever meal's coming next. As soon as davening is finished, I can go eat. But on Yom Kippur, we actually have a beautiful luxury. There's no distractions. There's no cholent getting cold. There's no herring that I'm going to miss out if I'm not the first one down to the social hall. No distractions. I can just focus on the davening, as if this were all I had in the world to concern myself with. Then the challenge, of course, is to daven the rest of the year with the same detachment from distractions. So, Sukkos is like that also. It reframes life for us. Many of us here have rebuilt our lives or rebuilt our homes. We lived in one place, and then it became time to pack up and move someplace else and start, if not from scratch, then from the basic elements. Other people have done renovations, a whole makeover where everything changes and you don't even recognize the place as it used to be. Still others of our people have been forced, unfortunately, through circumstance, to confront rebuilding. The homes and shuls on the west coast of Florida now are facing devastation from the catastrophic weather of the last couple of weeks. Nebuch, may we never know from such things, and may they find the strength and the wherewithal to make up all that's been destroyed. Sukkos is a big move. It's a big reno. It's rebuilding our dwelling, but for the entire Jewish people, for all of us. Build a new home, says the mitzvah of Sukkah, albeit a temporary one, and just take what's important. Just take what's essential. And keep in mind, always be mindful of the transience, the temporary nature of our sojourn on earth. To keep ourselves focused on what's important, let's take the message of the Mishnah. Rosho, Rubo, V'Shulchano. Let's keep our heads, most of our being, and our table, our divine service, where they ought rightfully to be. Then the place where we live, however temporary it might wind up to be, can rightfully be called a Sukkat Shalom, a sukkah of peace and also of completeness, as we'll do it with all our hearts and souls. Good Yom Tov.